JavaScript has a built-in error object that provides error information when an error occurs. Most times or oftentimes, running into an exception or error in your program is a normal thing for a programmer because it could be maybe during a rush period, trying to get something to completion very fast. It could be in that process that you mistakenly omit something or you put in a wrong syntax. All of these things, JavaScript already made provisions to handle them so that you can see where something goes wrong in your code, especially when the output you are getting is not the same as what you expect to get after the execution or after the runtime. It's for this purpose that JavaScript provides a built-in error object that provides error information when an error occurs. The error object provides two useful properties, and the first one is name and message. So these two useful properties allow you to see the name of what is wrong and the message that is being returned for that particular property. For example, let's say you use one of the supported keyword for variable declaration, and you try to use a variable that has not been initialized, a variable that has not been assigned a value. When you are troubleshooting or when you are trying to figure out what could be the problem, you are likely going to see the name of that variable, and then it will provide a message as to why that variable cannot be used in the context of where you are trying to use it or whatever it is that you are trying to use it for. That is a very practical example of everyday use of how to troubleshoot issues and errors in JavaScript programming language. So these two properties, name and message, provide useful information that can help us to pinpoint where something is wrong in our code or in our program. Now, these properties returns an error name and also return an error message. Usually, the error message is usually in form of a string so that you can read it and interpret it in a technical way that will allow you to know or go back into your code and fix which part of that code is broken or is not in alignment with what the JavaScript itself expects. Moving on, we have error names in JavaScript, and we have 6 different values that can be returned by the error name property. The first one is the eval error, a shorthand for evaluation error. It's a deprecated error name in JavaScript, and it was replaced by a syntax error instead. So instead of evaluation error, these days you see a syntax error with whatever part that you have missed or that you have done wrongly in your code. The number 2 is the range error. The range error usually comes up when a number out of range issue has occurred. So if you have a number that is out of range, JavaScript will throw a range error to let you know that the number you are working for is already out of range. Also, we have the reference error. A reference error is when an illegal reference has occurred in your code. So let's say in your syntax, you are trying to reference something that does not exist or something that exists but not in the context of where you are trying to access it. A practical example would be accessing the member of a function outside of that same function or inside another part of your program that does not have access to that function. An example like this can throw a reference error because what you are referencing might be something that is a block scope and is not globally accessible as you are trying to reference it in your code. Another error is the syntax error. A syntax error has occurred when there is an error in your code syntax. An example would be initializing using a variable that has not been initialized. This will throw an error or an instance whereby the syntax of what you are trying to do, maybe you are trying to call a property or you are trying to use a method in your program in a way that is not supported. For example, let's say you want to use you want to call a method on maybe an element or a variable, but instead of using that method with an open and closing bracket, you are trying to use it in form of a property. That definitely will throw a syntax error because it will not work. Another type of error is the type error. A type error usually occur when JavaScript cannot deduce the type of what you are trying to work with belongs to, whether a number, a boolean, a string, an object, etc. And finally, we have the URI error. This is an error that usually occurs from malformed URI. When there is a malformed URI, this error usually comes up. For example, maybe what you are trying to pass into your URI method is actually not a valid URI. JavaScript will reject this and will not be able to pass or process it. And this in turn can lead into URI error that will return to you at the end of the execution in your code or in your program.